So, as always, we are streaming live every Monday, 1 to 2 p.m., Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Catch us here live on my personal Facebook page and the Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy YouTube site. We are also on your favorite podcast forum. So, after this episode is done, I have a wonderful son, Jordan, who you guys have been following after he broke his leg, and he is doing wonderful, by the way, and we will update you on we're working with the hospital on pricing right now. It's a very, very interesting situation. Very, very great time to educate consumers about how they can negotiate hospital prices and bills. So stay tuned for that. I'm in the process right now. He's 8 weeks out. He's walking. He's doing full body weight exercises. He's doing great. He also is our video editor, and he uploads these episodes to our podcast forum. So SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, your favorite podcast forums, like, share, comment, listen to them there, and they should be up there in a couple days. So today we have Amber Wentworth out of Austin, Texas. She is also known as the Lone Star Keto Girl. Follow her on Instagram. She's got lots of followers there. Lone Star Keto Girl, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
Awesome, Amber. It's nice to see you. You're looking great. So usually in these podcasts, we just start with a story. So I've heard your story already, and I would love for our listeners and viewers to hear it. So Amber, just tell us a little bit of your weight loss journey and just the story of how you got into keto.
Absolutely. Okay, it's kind of a long journey, actually.
Yeah, I love it.
So I'll just start when I guess I was about 10 years old when I first started noticing that I was a little bit different than maybe some of the other kids in the class, like the girls in particular. They were these little things, and I was already starting to develop and had just a little bit of weight on me. Nothing major, just not anything compared to today. I would be a normal kid today,
Yep.
But you know how it is.
Yeah, right. Jen and I were talking about that today.
But I was made to feel different. You know, the girls, I got teased and, some things like that. So I knew that I wasn't the same. And so that kind of set me up for, all this self-image issues and that kind of thing that I had later in life. I was on diets when I was young. I mean, probably my first diet was like when I was 11 or something. And, I watched my mother, do different diets because her family background had some really, really nasty health issues going on: diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, you name it, and obesity. Like, I'm talking obesity. And she didn't want to be like that. So she constantly had salads and stuff like that. And so, I watched that and I knew that I needed to do something to keep me from, being different, because I didn't like that, being different and being called out. And, you would get teased even within your family because you didn't fit that certain mold. And it wasn't like they were doing it to be mean, but these little comments really kind of added up. And, so I did think that. So I did kind of do some weird diet kind of thing when I was very young. By the time I was 15, I was bulimic and anorexic.
Wow.
And that lasted for a while. And the summer before my senior year, I weighed a whopping 98 pounds.
Oh my.
And wore a size 00. And that was back in the day when 00s were like this big.
We're real 00s.
Yeah, but we won't say that because I kind of like my 0 too, so whatever. But so I had some serious eating disorders going on there. And I tried every diet out there. And when I was I think it was when I was 16, I actually did a medical diet. And my boyfriend, who is my husband now, he actually paid for that. And I had to get my dad to sign off on it because they took blood and they kept track of that kind of thing. And, sure, I lost weight. I lost weight on every single diet because I have this crazy willpower. But so what? Because as soon as I made my goal, guess what? I couldn't keep eating that way because it was miserable. It made me I was hungry. I was hangry. I was irritable. I hated everybody. And I especially hated the people who could eat whatever they wanted. Oh, I really hated those people. And, even the ones who were overweight or obese and they felt like they could enjoy their dinner and have whatever they wanted, that made me mad, but I wouldn't allow myself to go there. Anyway, I could make my goals. Never a problem. Losing weight, piece of cake for me. Really, it was. But the maintaining, I couldn't do, because who can keep doing that forever? I certainly couldn't, obviously. And I've lost 4 different times in my life. I've lost, like 80 to 100 pounds.
Wow.
That does not include all the times I've lost 10, 20, even 50 and 60, which 50 and 60, that was nothing. I could drop that without a problem. But it always came back. And so as I kind of went through life, I did this whole yo-yoing thing, yo. And of course I had kids, and I ended up being a gestational diabetic, and, had to, be real careful what I ate. And I was so concerned about my babies that I did do exactly what I was told. Unfortunately, now I know what I was told was not necessarily the best thing I could have done, but whatever. I ended up, everything was fine. The babies were fine. All
Good.
That was good. So that wasn't an issue. But I actually, because of how I was eating and all, I lost weight through my pregnancy. So by the time it was over, with my daughter, I gained 5 total pounds. And with my son, I gained a total of 11 pounds. Well, you lose a lot more than that. So I actually weighed less after having my kids than I did when I first got pregnant. So that was kind of crazy, but that was because of, what I was doing or whatever. And after that, after having the kids and, being home, I stayed home with both kids, and, you're feeding the kids, you're busy. So you eat a lot of crap, frozen lasagnas, you grab McDonald's. Ugh, I can't even believe I did that. Yeah. Or he allowed my kids to have that. Ugh. But that's what I did. I mean, who has time for that? I did do a lot of cooking too, but a lot of the nights, pop in that frozen lasagna. So that didn't do me any favors for sure. I didn't have time to focus on, me and my weight, my health. Who has time for that? So that went on the back burner. I was too worried about taking care of my kids and everybody else. I didn't take care of myself. And it just became a habit, to just not put myself first in the health department, and my health progressively got worse. And as I got into my 40s, I had some serious health issues. And it really kind of freaked me out. I knew I had an issue, like pretty severe health issue, because, and I've said this a million times, I'll say it again, when I would change the kitty litter, it would knock me out physically so bad that I would have to go lay down on the couch because I couldn't breathe and my heart was beating out of my chest. I pretty well knew that I had high blood pressure, but I was scared of doctors, and I didn't want to know the truth. I didn't want a doctor to tell me, you have these health issues because you're fat. I didn't want to admit that I was fat. I'm not stupid. I could see in the mirror. I knew what size I wore. I at my heaviest, I was wearing a 26, 28 and weighed over 240 pounds. I don't know what I actually weighed, because by the time I weighed on one of my weight losses, I had probably already lost 30 pounds or so, so I have no clue. But I'm only 5'2". I'm a small person.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was bad. And, so I didn't want to admit it. And so I hid it. I hid my health issues. I hid all it from my husband. I mean, we would like walk up a hill or go to a movie and have to walk up the stairs. I always picked the lower level, even though he knew I liked the upper seats, because I didn't want to take the risk of overexerting myself and then doing the whole, right, because then he would know something was really wrong. So I did crazy stuff like that. But there was a time where I can't even remember what it was. I ended up having to go to the doctor for something unrelated, no big deal, but I needed to go. And when they took my blood pressure, the nurse, her eyes were like really big, and she was like, I need you to lay down and be really calm. And I was like, what the heck? Next thing you know, the doctor's coming in, more nurses, the tech guys with the EKG machines, and they're hooking me all up, and they're giving me medication, and told me that if I didn't get my blood pressure down with the medication, they were admitting me to the hospital right then and there. That scared the crap out of me.
I bet.
I mean, it really did, because that is not something I wanted to admit. And like I said, our family has a history of these horrible things. So it was not good. And then after that, it was one thing after another. I was going in for all these different testing. Of course, I had to see the cardiac, doctor and do the stress test and all that. And I was put on 4 medications. Well, one of them had the diuretic, so I call it 4, but really it was 3, and one of them had a diuretic.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do that. I mean, come on, that's a lot of medication for one issue, right? Then I found out I was pre-diabetic. Okay, that really scared me. And it kicked my butt into gear to lose weight again. And I did. And I lost about 100 pounds. And it was all, things got better, of course. And in the meantime, I was also having issues like anemia. And I was bleeding and didn't realize, and they couldn't figure out exactly where at the time. So they were doing all this different exploratory stuff, the Roto-Rooter, the endoscopy, this way, that way, and then the, doing, checking out my uterus. And it ended up finding out that I had fibroids in my uterus. So they did an oversure procedure where they basically burned out the inside of me to take care of that. So that was kind of taken care of. But seriously, one thing after another, and it just got to be ridiculous. So I did, I can remember being in the doctor's office, and when he gave me the results of everything after a bunch of testing, I broke down crying, and I was like, you're going to tell me I'm fat, and that's the whole issue. And he was like, honey, I'm not telling you that. I'm saying you have some health issues, and we need to address it. We're not talking about your fat, like that. But for some reason, I was more afraid of admitting that I was fat than, dealing with my health issues. So it was this crazy thing, and who knows what goes on in your head, but anyway, so I lost the weight, and things got better, and I took care of a lot of the health issues and et cetera. And then I made my goal, of course. Okay. So I was still starving. I hated the way, and it was a diet, right? So now that I've hit my maintenance, I should be able to not have to be on a diet anymore, right? So I went back to kind of adding in some things that, now I understand it was not a good idea.
Right.
But I gained the weight again. Now, luckily, I never fully gained back to my heaviest weight. And each time I would lose these big chunks of weight, I never quite hit, my highest of the time before where I had lost, if that makes sense. Each time I started out at a lower weight, I guess you would say. And so I was finally to a point where I was about to give up. I was just done. I was tired. I was miserable. I didn't understand why my body wouldn't cooperate, why I couldn't keep the weight off, why, the 500 different diets that I did only worked temporarily. What was wrong with me? So I was just about to the point of giving up and saying, okay, apparently I'm meant to be fat and unhealthy, and I may just have to die early because I don't know what else to do. I'm just at the end. Well, my daughter, bless her, she had a friend who happened to be selling a product, and I'm not endorsing this, but it was exogenous ketones. And it was a trial pack. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it one more go. This is it. I'm done after this. It's done. So I went ahead and I did it with her. Well, within the first couple of days, I looked at my husband and I was like, oh my God, where has this been? This miracle drug. This is the best I've ever felt in my life. I felt free. I felt, happy, and my moods were good, and I wasn't starving. I wasn't craving. And so I started doing some research into it and started learning about ketones and ketosis. And I was like, what the heck is this? And I was like, why have I not heard of this? And then, the ketogenic diet. What? I can actually do a diet and make me feel as good as what that product did. What? Why didn't somebody tell me that? Why is this not common knowledge? I mean, why was that the first time I was hearing of it? It made no sense to me. And so, I'm just looking around going, why do you not know? Do you not know? Oh my God, I have to tell people because this is the most amazing thing I've ever felt. And then I just effortlessly was dropping weight, seriously, effortlessly. I was not miserable. I didn't crave. I wasn't this, person who felt so deprived that it made you angry. And, I was just like, ooh, even my husband noticed. He was like, whoa, okay, there's something different this time. Because, I've been with him since I was 15. So
Right.
he has seen this whole thing happen. So, he's quite aware. So when he sees something different, he's pretty keen on that. And so he was like, hey, go for it. And then he kind of agreed to go along with eating keto too. And he actually really enjoyed it. And so that's kind of taken me up to keto. And I ended up losing just under, I guess, about 80 pounds on keto. And I've pretty much been able to maintain that without any issue at all. With the caveat here, I'm just entered into that M word, menopause. I even hate saying that word, but it's kind of wreaking some havoc with my hormones. And then plus with all the stress, and I'm sure you're very well versed on what cortisol can do to your body.
Absolutely.
So I've gained a little bit. It's nothing huge or major, but for somebody who struggled for so long, I don't want that back on. So I am working with a doctor currently who specializes in this, and he's trying to get my hormones back on level to help my body out. So that's where I'm at so far. But did you want me to go ahead into carnivore? Or?
No, well, I got a few questions first, you don't mind, and Janet probably does too. So thanks for that story. It's a wonderful story, and I'm so glad that there was a point in your life where you just realized that you've got to do something about this, and that it's diet related, and you didn't want to be on medications your whole life. And I know your story you shared earlier with me in the week was, your grandma was on medications that would fill up like a fishing box, you said, right? I think. And you didn't want to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a sewing kit, right? And I got to tell you, Jan and I being pharmacists, especially when we were in traditional pharmacy and we didn't focus on health and wellness like we do now, we would have a lot of patients like that. They would have 20 different medications, and it was just, we felt that a lot of them were lifestyle-related issues, and if they just changed their diet and lifestyle, they would be off those medications. And that's one of the reasons we have people like yourself on to share their stories, so we can educate and empower individuals that they are in charge of their own health care, and that they don't need to be on medications the rest of their life necessarily, because that's not necessarily the best thing for them if they can change it with diet and lifestyle. So that's the first comment I wanted to make. Now, the question I had, you mentioned when you were a gestational diabetic, you said that you realize now that they were telling you to do some things that probably weren't the best. Will you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I had to eat at least 5 different times in the day. Okay. 5 to 6 times they wanted me to eat. And they were like, little meals or whatever. So I was eating all day long. And I got to the point where I was sick to death of food. I didn't even want to look at food again. I was over it. And then kind of what they had me eating was kind of similar to what you see in the American Diabetic Association,
Yep.
You can have a little bit in moderation,
Yep.
And no, when you're in that kind of situation, I'm sorry. It's not about moderation. It's about getting rid of the crap that's causing you to have this
Absolutely.
issue.
Right. I'm assuming you're on insulin also when you were pregnant. Did you have?
No.
Oh, you
no,
didn't.
I
You
was
didn't.
not.
Okay,
no,
so you could control it with diet.
Controlled by diet, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we see it all the time in our healthcare, and I don't think in healthcare, whether it be type 2 or type 1 even, that we treat diabetes very well at all. And type 1, a lot of times what we do, if you look at episode 1 from Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, I had my twin brother on there, and we talked about his son, my nephew, who contracted type 1 diabetes when he was 10, and how the system talked to him about about treating as diabetes. And as you can probably guess, if it came from the American Diabetic Association recommendations, they talk about eating carbs and just using more insulin. It's like, oh, don't worry about it. Eat 80% carbs and you can just turn his insulin up. And I just don't think that's a good recommendation personally. I mean, it's all about whether it's type 2 or type 1. Type 2, I believe should be 100% almost controlled with diet and lifestyle. Type 1 is still a lifestyle, and diet needs to be watched in order to keep your blood sugar in check. So anyway, it's just an interesting how, in the medical system, we just think drugs are going to fix everything, and we don't talk about diet. Do you have any comments about that, Janet?
Oh, I'll just say something really quick.
Yeah, sure, please.
The other day I had posted something about, diabetes and the lifestyle and et cetera. And I had this lady who just was bent out of shape. How dare I suggest that by what you eat affects, because, type 1 diabetics, they don't have a choice and all this kind of thing. And I was like, no, that it's not saying that you can be cured of it, but you can definitely make changes to where you can lower the insulin need. I don't understand people who are okay, like what you were saying. Oh, go ahead and have that cake, just up your insulin. Oh, good gosh. Do you know what that's doing to your body? It is so not cool. But this is what we hear. This is what we see. And I thank goodness I never got to that point, but I see family members and it breaks my heart. I have a cousin, and what he's going through, there really should not be any reason for that. There just shouldn't, but the ADA, he did what they told him to do.
Yeah.
And for that, he's suffering.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. You don't need to use all the insulin that they tell you to use. You can use a lot less. My nephew gets away with 12 units a day. There are patients that need 100 units a day, but they eat junk. If you're eating crap, you're going to need more insulin. You're going to spike your glucose. And I know, and I had the same experience, Amber, when anytime you get into a debate with somebody about diabetes and type 1 comes up, they say, well, you know what? Type 1 cannot be controlled with diet and lifestyle. Well, and like you said, it can't be cured, but it can be helped and controlled without, no matter how much insulin you use, no matter what kind of diabetic drugs you are on. If you don't watch your diet when you are diabetic, type 1 or type 2, you will not control your blood sugar, period. And I hear things like, well, we don't really want to deprive type 1 diabetics of their cake or their sweets, and so we just have them use more insulin. And this is my reply to that. This sounds really cold-hearted, but this is true. This is what I say. And I'm not saying you shouldn't splurge every once in a while, but you gotta understand that it should be just every once in a while. And if your blood sugars are out of control because you're not depriving yourself of cake and the sweets and the cookies, that's fine. Because if we don't deprive you of that now, we will deprive you of your eyesight and your kidneys later.
Exactly.
I mean, seriously, it's that serious to me. So, Janet, do you have any comments about that, Janet?
Well, I think one of the things that is not relayed to clients or patients is that insulin resistance is real. So if we keep adding on more insulin and more insulin and more insulin, we get to a point where we have resistance. And then also, when we put patients on insulin, they gain weight. So, there's that to be considered too, as well as they don't have as much control. And it's easier to start out using a toolbox of using diet and activity to control your levels of glucose than it is to add in insulin on top of it without keeping it in that range, because where do you go after you have a certain point? And there are new drugs on the market. We were just talking about that the other day, and some of their side effects are you urinate glucose. Well, it turns into the side effect of having infection. Well, you're already predisposed to infections when you're a diabetic. So I would choose, if it was my body, to control it with diet. And we know that diabetes puts us at risk when we have too high of carbs. So why not try an option that's available, that we have so many tools out there in the box to utilize right now, which we didn't have when we were growing up. There was lots of diets, but, the keto and the carnivore diet lend themselves to helping control the carbs. And so, I mean, that's just my opinion with that right now. But Amber, I'm really interested in your research on the keto diet, because there's so much out there hitting us from all sides right now. So can you just kind of fill in the blank about how you came to where you were comfortable with your diet?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. The thing is, whenever you do something that's against the status quo, gosh forbid, you're going to get this backlash. Like, you don't know what you're doing. You're crazy. It's always been this way. You always eat like this. And so when you do something different, you do catch a lot of flack, even from family and friends, because they don't understand. They haven't done the research. They haven't experimented on their own bodies to see. I did different things. I had a blood glucose monitor as well as a keto monitor. One and the same. And I would test out certain foods. So I can say for a fact, I'm sorry people who are just so fruit fanatics who think that's the best thing that ever lived because it's natural. When I would eat a banana, let me just tell you what my glucose did. It went shoot and it stayed there for a while.
Of course.
That's bad. That is bad. And when you have that chronically happen and it stays for a long period of time, that's not a good thing for your body. Now, I'm not saying every single person would have the exact same reaction as I did, but it does lend the question, is this good for my body? I tested other fruit as well. Pineapples, yeah, not good. Blueberries weren't horrible, but they still, made my glucose go up. So fruit, here's the thing, fruit has been, bred to be bigger and sweeter and available all year long. That's not cool. It's just not cool. That's not how we were meant to be.
Well, basically, if it tastes good, it tastes sweet, it's going to spike your blood glucose. I mean, it's just
pretty
obvious.
Much. Yeah. And so, I tested a lot, and the same with grains, healthy grains. Grains are so good. And I used to eat oatmeal every single morning. And before that, it was cereal. I love my cereal, I'm not going to lie. And I love my oatmeal, I'm not going to lie. But I would have oatmeal with a banana and my margarine. And skim milk.
Plastic. Margarine's just plastic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's terrible. And I would have my low-calorie, fat-free bread or low-fat bread or whatever it was, a 40-calorie slice. Whole grains, though. And so that's what I had for breakfast. Well, let me just tell you what that little meter did. Woo-wee! If you could even, I think I counted it as being like 17 spoonful of sugar. Yeah, I think that's what it was, what I was eating as a normal breakfast for years, thinking I was being healthy. Well,
because it was low calories.
Yes, low calories, and it was healthy grains. Come on, healthy grains. And so, I believed that. I believed in the food guidelines. I mean, why would it lie? I obviously it's something wrong with me. But I knew that grains spike the crap out of my glucose. So, and again, not everybody will have the exact same, issue of insulin resistance, but let's get real. A big chunk of our population, and what was it, 80%, somewhere around that, are metabolically unhealthy. And just because you haven't been diagnosed with high blood pressure or diabetes or whatever yet, doesn't mean you're metabolically healthy.
That's the thing. And, we had a guy on our radio show a couple episodes back, and he was 713 pounds. He had weight loss surgery last week, and he's lost. He's obviously losing weight, doing really well, but he was never diagnosed with diabetes, and that's one of the reasons they put off giving him surgery, because he didn't have enough chronic conditions yet. But you got to think, Amber, it was only a matter of time, and I don't care what the black and white numbers are. He had insulin resistance. He might not have had the definition of diabetes. guaranteed he was insulin resistant.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's just, like you say, it's just a matter of time. And in some ways, I think, people that don't, I think in some ways, like my nephew, for instance, he monitors his blood glucose very, very frequently. In some ways, he has an advantage, kind of like you do. You did because you monitored your glucose very frequently, so you know what foods did to your blood
Yes.
sugars. Just imagine the people that eat bad all the time, they don't know that their blood sugars are spiking and their pancreas is being taxed. And it is only a matter of time before they are going to be diabetic. That's just the facts. So it would be kind of nice sometimes if we all monitored our blood glucose more often, so we know what happens. And I can honestly tell you, I have not done that. I do know a lot of people that have, but so good for you. Kudos for you for knowing those things.
I think personally, every single person should at one point wear a continuous glucose monitor. They're the little things that you put on your arm that test. Actually, it's an interstitial fluid more so than your actual blood or whatever. But to see how foods in real time, you see it on your phone, you see how the foods affect you. I would like to think that would make a difference. But then the other part of me, like when you tell a diabetic that, well, is it really worth losing limbs and, whatever? Well, yeah.
Right.
That blows my mind.
Right. It is. Well, I think in some ways you can blame the system, the healthcare system, for it because, we have a system that just rewards people for staying sick. I mean, think about it, Amber. You're not on any meds anymore, correct? Oh, you're on one blood pressure med, correct? Is that true?
No, I'm
you're
off
none.
everything.
You're on none. Okay. You're on no blood pressure meds. Think about that. The pharmaceutical companies aren't getting rich off you anymore.
Ha.
And the doctors, I don't know if you go to a regular doctor regularly anymore, but if you do have diabetes, doctors usually see those people once a month, and they do that because that's what the insurance company pays for. It's just a way that they continue to perpetuate the system. Do I think that doctors really personally want to keep people sick? Not necessarily. It's just the way the system works. That's why we have a radio show. That's why I wrote a book, because people need to be educated and empowered about their health care so they can take charge of it, and not an insurance company, not the doctor. And speaking of my book talks about it. The very first chapter talks about it. It talks about my weight loss journey. I was 60 pounds heavier 10 years ago, and I had those range of diseases, high cholesterol, hypertension. And when I lost weight, all those things went away. I experienced the same thing, Amber. People said I was crazy, especially the medical establishment, because I was losing weight too fast and all this. And I'm like, well, really the most dangerous thing you can do is be overweight. So I wasn't too worried about it. And my book's called Sickened, How the Government Ruined Healthcare and How to Fix It. There's a 6-step solution in there. And just realize that you, the viewer, you, the consumer of your own healthcare, you're in charge. And you can make those changes. So go to Amazon, download the Kindle version. Working on an audio book now and also a paperback version. So please check that out on Amazon. Sickened, How the Government Ruined Healthcare and How to Fix It. Janet, do you have any questions for Amber, specifically more on the keto?
I do.
Okay.
So I know a lot of our listeners have heard of the keto diet, but there might be some new people. So let's define the keto diet and what that can entail for food, because when I started listening to my young son Jordan has done keto, and I was kind of shocked as to what was included and what that meant. So let's fill in those blanks for us.
Well, unfortunately, like with any, even carnivore, there's a wide range of how people implement it. You can have the ones where, well, if it fits your macros, so they're still maybe eating processed foods or some sugar, say, because if it still fits within their carb allowance, they think that's okay. Okay, so you have that at the far end. And then you have it all the way to the other side where you are eating only whole foods kind of thing, not the processed stuff, not the keto treats, not the whatever. So really, the definition of keto is if you're in ketosis for the most part, really, and you should eliminate grains, sugar, processed foods, seed oils, Those are like the big things. Also like beans and legumes, and some other things, but that's kind of the gist of it. So basically you're eating animal products, your vegetables, some fruits, mostly it's like berries. That's kind of more of the middle of the road, kind
Right,
of like
right.
the better part,
That's almost a paleo diet, correct? Sort of. I mean, pretty close, maybe.
Well, it's up for paleo does allow, like tubers and honey and some other stuff like that.
And sweet
So
potatoes, right? Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that's true. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You're right. Yeah. So a few years ago, you had good luck with the keto, and a few years ago you decided to go carnivore. Will you tell us about that journey?
Yes, sir.
And tell us what that is.
Okay.
Define that.
All right. All right. First of all, carnivore is you're eating animal-based foods. And again, there's a little bit of a range, and people will argue and think that their way is the only way. It goes from just eating beef and salt and water all the way up to including everything in the animal kingdom, including dairy, honey, fish, ruminants,
Honey.
everything. So there's a big range there. The way I do it is I pretty much am beef, but I do have other stuff. I occasionally have salmon, elk, bison, lamb. There's some other things that I will incorporate, and occasionally eggs. I just haven't really craved eggs, so I don't eat that too much. And I do have a little bit of dairy in the form of butter and occasionally heavy cream. Sometimes I have coffee. I've been trying to break that habit. And so now I'm down to occasionally instead of twice a day. So, I'm making some gains there. It's a little difficult. I do include spices because quite frankly, I could not eat plain meat. I'm sorry. I just can't, at least not yet. Maybe one day I can, but I like my spices, but they're limited. And it's usually like a Redmond seasonal, Caribbean, lemon garlic, and the paleo powder pink. Those are pretty much what I stick to. They don't have sugar in it. They don't have the corn oil. I don't even know why that's in there, but some spices have it. I don't get it. I don't understand why you have to have sugar other than to addict you. That's the only thing I can think, because you don't need it. And that's pretty much what I do. But when I got into keto, actually I was 2 years into keto before I started carnivore. And I had already pretty much tapered off on the need to recreate everything that I had in my past life, but make it keto version. So I kind of got over that, and I wasn't doing the keto desserts as much, and the fat bombs and all that kind of thing that you hear about going with keto. I had kind of stopped that, and I still was on one blood pressure medication, a small dose, and I had a little bit of rosacea. So my friend, who was very carnivore, that I do a podcast with, Brett, he was like, why don't you just try it and see? And I thought, what, if I'm going to advocate for low carb, all the way from low carb all the way to the other spectrum, I really should experience it and know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, I just need to be quiet,
Right.
So I decided to experiment. And what happened was, within a couple of days, every digestive issue I've had since I was 3 years old was gone. Bam, gone. The gas, the bloating, the constipation, and pain. When I went on keto, it got a lot better. Okay, it did. And I thought that was what was normal. But it ended up being like this amazing thing, kind of like when I first started keto. It was like,
Yeah.
With that part, I wasn't expecting. I don't know why. It makes sense that your digestion would be better because you don't have all that fiber and the irritants from plant-based foods and stuff. So it makes sense. But I wasn't expecting that, because I thought my digestion was spot on, because gas is normal and, all that kind of stuff you're told. And occasional bloat, it's all good, whatever. Well, guess what? Except for this little bout I had with some little virus, I've had 0 digestive issues. I mean, gas, that's gone. And that is very common with carnivores. So you can't just say it's a isolated thing. That is one of the big things carnivores say, is that, in some, it's a disappointment. I don't have my gas,
Right. Yeah. Some people do say that. Yeah.
You always got, guys. Okay. I'll just say that. But, and the pain, I would have these pains and it would just be miserable. I remember, just going to my knees with pain. I didn't do that on keto, but I still had the bloat and everything. Anyway, so that was the, light bulb moment for me with carnivore. And after that, I decided there is nothing in the plant kingdom that I want bad enough to feel like I used to feel. I just don't care anymore. And I love vegetables. There was a point where I seriously considered being vegetarian, not vegan, but vegetarian. But I still did like my chicken. So I pretty much ate chicken, fish, because you're supposed to eat lean meats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lean meats. And
No
lots
fat.
of vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And right. And that's what I did. And seed oils, because they're heart healthy. Yeah, I know. A lot of, but
I get it.
I'm sorry, I'm being sarcastic, but it just gets so old.
Yeah.
And I fell for it for so many years. So I get it. But now that I've seen the light, it just makes me just cringe when I hear that now. But anyway, so the digestion was great. And the other thing that really helped clear up was my rosacea. Because I had it seriously bad, where I looked like Rudolph. I mean, it was just like, and I looked like an alcoholic. You know how they have like the little lines?
Yeah, Gin Blossom. Yep.
Yeah, and little acne like bumps, little tiny ones that look almost like little blisters. And it was bad, and it was embarrassing. And even under makeup, you could still tell. And if I rubbed off my makeup, oh goodness, that was embarrassing. So it was a very, outside kind of thing, like being obese. It was embarrassing. And so for me, it was a big thing. And through keto, it improved a lot. And I just had a little bit left to kind of deal with. And I still have just a little bit, like when I get really hot and that kind of thing, my nose will turn red. But for the most part, all the veiny stuff is gone. The little blisters have gone. And most of the blushing through my cheek is gone. It's just like a little bit right here. And so that was pretty incredible. And the other thing is I was able to get off the last bit of my medication. So I'm taking 0 medication.
Awesome.
And the only thing I am doing now, like I said, I'm working with a hormone doctor to kind of help balance things. And so I'm taking 3 supplements. Mm-hmm. So that's all I'm doing. I'm not even taking other vitamins or supplements or anything like that because I don't feel the need yet. Yeah. I would if I felt the need, but I'm eating such nutrient-dense foods now that I'm not feeling I'm lacking anything. But I mean, no, I have not tested my blood, so I don't know for sure. So, but I'm going by the way I feel,
So, I think the carnivore diet is the ultimate anti-inflammatory diet. And when you think about rosacea, and a lot of skin problems, psoriasis, eczema, things like that, they are a lot of times an autoimmune response from something possibly you're eating or being exposed to at least. And people don't like to admit that, but a lot of times vegetables, especially, they have ingredients in them that are inflammatory to our bodies. And for instance, think about some vegetables that you mentioned your spices, and this is a little bit different than spices, but think about vegetables that are spicy, like green peppers. Why do vegetables have spices in them? Why are jalapeno peppers hot? So animals don't eat them, yet we do eat them. So you wonder if that is not good for us. And I'm not necessarily recommending people stop doing that, but the nice thing about carnivore is you figured out it's a great anti-inflammatory diet, a great elimination diet. You eliminate anything that could be inflammatory, and you slowly start adding things back. Maybe just start with beef. And if your issues go away, like digestive issues, how many people are on medications for digestive issues if they just change their diet?
Me,
it'd get better, right?
I was.
Yeah,
Nexium,
who's not?
8 years for every single
Nexium
day, for 8 years.
And getting off Nexium is worse than getting off of cocaine. It is so hard to get off of because our bodies, our tummies, our stomach is meant to be acidic. Yeah. So when you give a drug that completely neutralizes the acid in our stomach, that's not a good thing.
No, it was not.
No, acid tummies, basic bodies. Our stomach is supposed to have acid to digest and digest food and kill toxins. There are certain bacteria and viruses that most bacteria and viruses cannot live in our stomachs because of the high concentration of acids. So when you kill that acid, you get all kinds of problems, including overgrowth of bad bacteria. You get dysbiosis. So Nexium long term, you even look at it. Nexium, Prilosec long term. They even say it in the package insert, no more than 6 weeks. There are people that have been on there for 20 years. And what happens is your stomach lining gets thinner because it's not having to be protected from acid anymore. So when all of a sudden you stop doing that, you've got a thin stomach lining and it hurts. So, change your diet. Don't go on medications long term. It's not good at all. Go ahead, Janet.
So, Amber, I am so excited to hear how you are helping others. So, if you could just tell us a little bit how you are working with other people in the industry, or how you are using your image classes and nutrition to train and share with others.
Oh, yeah. After realizing how important nutrition is, you always hear that, but I used to roll my eyes too, or whatever. But being on the other side now, I realize how incredibly important health is. It's everything. I mean, with the current situation going on, guess what? Who's at the most risk, generally speaking?
Right.
Yeah, it's a scary situation. And so I'm currently taking a nutrition certification, and
Wonderful.
I'm relearning things that I've learned before and I've researched, but it's just reinforcing how very important that is. And I am not saying that every single person in the whole entire world needs to be keto or carnivore. No, I'm not. However, I am advocating for giving it a go if what you're doing is not working. And so, and I didn't know about keto. Now it's a little bit more mainstream. People have at least heard the word, whether they think it's negative or positive, at least they've heard the word. I never had heard the word when I started. And that was just, 3 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. So I feel that it's so important to let people know that there might be another way for them if nothing else is working. If what you're doing is working and you're happy and you're healthy and there's nothing and you're sure there's nothing wrong, hey, you go for it. Good for you. You figured it out. But I hate to say it, probably most of us, that's not the case. So why not try it? So I spend a lot of my time researching, talking to doctors, talking to nutritionists, and other people in the health field. I started working with the MeatRx platform, who Shawn Baker, Dr. Shawn Baker, co-started. And I do a lot of behind the scenes work as well as in front, I guess you'd say, because I do the interviews for the success stories for people who went more meat-based and all the good things that have happened. I do those interviews. And so every day I hear positive results. And there's going to come a point where you can't ignore all of us. Why are we all experiencing similar things? There's got to be something to it. I mean, maybe it's not perfect for you, but you're going to have to pay attention to it. There might be something to it. And so through the MeatRx platform, there's so at MeatRx.com, by the way, there's so much good on there. There's information, coaching. I am a coach. I'm a carnivore and a fasting coach because I very much believe in both of those, as well as keto. It depends on where you want to be, in your life, what's better for you. But I do coach those too. And I eventually want to be a nutritional coach as well. And there's so many things I want to go into because I just want to help people so bad because I don't want anybody to ever have to suffer like I did. Yeah. It's ridiculous that it took me 40 years to get where I am, but that's because I didn't have the right information.
That's right. Right. And that's why we have people like you on, Amber, so we can educate and empower individuals to take control of their health. If you check out our previous episodes, they're archived. Dr. Shawn O'Mara, he specializes in intermittent fasting. We had him on. You guys can learn more about that Also, Dr. Sean Baker back in February, we had him on with MeatRx. You can learn a lot more about carnivore. So Amber, you got about 30 seconds here. You have a podcast, and what are your parting words? And talk a little bit about your podcast and how people can get a hold of you.
Oh gosh, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. Look under Lone Star Keto, Lone Star Keto Girl. I won't give you all the little thing, but if you look up it, you'll find me. I have a YouTube, Lone Star Keto. I have a podcast called Ketovore Cast that I co-host with a friend who got me into carnivore. And I also started my newest podcast. I had my first guest, Dr. Ken Berry, this morning for my podcast called Lone Star Keto, which will be on my YouTube. It'll be part of my YouTube. So you can find me there. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. You can find me, trust me.
Awesome.
Type my name, you'll find me somewhere.
Yeah, you are obviously very well educated about this, and thank you for staying up with the literature and educating our viewers and listeners today. You have been listening to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where we talk everything healthcare. And Thursday, tune in. We will have Dr. Raul Garcia. He is an ER doctor, and he will be talking about some things in healthcare, and he's also running for governor of Washington State. Amber, thank you for being on. We could talk to you for hours. Love it. We'll talk to you later. Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham.
Thank you.